Hey, how's it going, everybody? I'm Rollshambo, connoisseur and collector of all things sharp and shiny, and welcome back to another episode of Is It Grail or Is It Garbage? Now, we've had some good ones to hit the lineup so far. We've done the Demco 80 20.5, we've done the Spyderco Para 3, we've done the Spyderco Smock, we've done a couple different knives, and we're going to keep it going. I'm going to hit pretty much every single knife in my collection. I've got more knives coming in. I've been reaching out to manufacturers to get some samples to review, and so there is definitely more in the pipeline. But today we're going to go over this guy, and here's the deal. This is a knife that I actually got over a month ago, and I was in the honeymoon period hard. Today's going to be an excellent example of exactly why I don't just give a knife a rank right after I get it, because it's not what you might think it is if you were to watch the unboxing for this. And that's also why it's important not to ever just go online and spout some crap about why a knife is amazing right after you got it. We all buy knives and then we hop on the YouTubes and we want to get validated in the comments section by going to all these popular YouTubers channels, but I'm not here to do that. I'm here to give you the truth. We're going to flip the camera around and dive in nice and deep on this BRS Khopesh. Let's go. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right in. This is the BRS Evolve Khopesh. Now, if you know anything about BRS, you know that they are primarily a balisong company. They make butterfly knives that are exceptional. I have one of their butterfly knives. This isn't really a butterfly knife channel, and I'm not very good at flipping, so you probably won't ever see that knife on this channel. But you will see this one. This is from their Evolve series. Their Evolve series is really not necessarily made by them. It's designed by them and then made by an OEM in China, which I've done some research, and I truly cannot find who does their work. I'm sure it's going to be, like Riot or maybe We Knife Company. If you think you know who the OEM for BRS is, pop it down in the comment section down below. I definitely want to find out. I'm going to go ahead and jump into some specs, some basic specs on this. You're looking at a Bowler M390 blade. It's got shredded or marble carbon fiber, whichever one you want to call it. It does have titanium, and I did need to correct myself from my unboxing. That is not a bolster. This is in fact a liner lock. It does have titanium liners, titanium milled pocket clip, as well as gold-plated titanium barrel spacers. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention a couple other things. It's about 9¼ inches long, and it weighs almost 6½ ounces. It's hefty. This is not a small knife. I've got large size gloves, maybe even larger, and I get more than a full 4-finger grip. If you got those large hands, people are always saying, oh my word, look at how big your hands are. This might be the knife for you. I took this in on a swap. I traded a Hoback Sumo and I got a Cold Steel 80-15, and I got this. And the numbers made sense to me, and what immediately caught my eye was this blade shape. If you know what a Khopesh is, it's an Egyptian scythe/sickle, and it's just a unique blade shape. And on this one, it kind of looks like they made a sheep's foot, and then they were like, let's just pull it out here, and then boom, they're like, hey, that looks like a Khopesh. And so yeah, that's unique. I don't know of any other knife with this blade shape, and I love knives that are unique, that don't just look like every other knife. And then of course you've got this cheese grater, thumb grater thing that they call a thumb ramp. Technically it is a thumb stud. It is running on ball bearings, and it does not have a full-length back spacer, but I wish it would. When I first got this, I immediately fell in love with this knife, as I tend to do, because I was in the honeymoon phase and I really liked the shine off the carbon fiber. I love that that was titanium, and I thought that this was a bolster lock. It's not. even though that is titanium and that is titanium, they're not the same piece of titanium. That is an inset liner lock, which kind of confused me, because if you got titanium here and you got titanium here, you might as well just go ahead and make it a bolster lock. Bolster locks combine the best of both worlds from a frame lock and a liner lock. The big plus side for a liner lock is that no matter how hard you squeeze the handle, you can still deploy the blade. Let me show you what I mean. So like, even if I was holding it like this, right, with a liner lock, not a problem. The knife doesn't care. These scales are in the way and they're not going to keep you from being able to deploy the blade. It's not going to press the knife into the lock. Vice versa though, because with a liner lock, that is a liner that the blade is up against, it's not necessarily as strong as a frame lock. So a frame lock, because the lock is part of the frame itself, it's proven to be able to withstand more. Frame locks are more heavy duty than liner locks for that reason, because the locking mechanism is part of the thing that you're holding on to. So you'd think that the way to go on this would be at the very least a frame lock, since we are talking about, a 4+ inch long blade, and a 6.5 ounce knife. Like, this is heavy. This is one of those knives where you really challenge people.
They're like, I like big knives. I don't want anything that's too small. I need a big knife. It's got to fit my hands.
Here you go. Use this. But the fact is that if you use this for anything kind of hardcore, you're depending upon a lock that may or may not withstand whatever you're doing, because it's a liner lock. Now, I know in most cases you're never really going to exceed that liner lock, but when you have a big knife, you're always tempted to do more hardcore stuff, like jam it into car doors and prove just how sturdy that is. Not that I would ever suggest doing that with M390. So a little bit of a disappointment there, because that could have been one piece, and the bolster lock would have in fact given you the best of both worlds with a liner lock and with a frame lock. The next thing that I kind of fell out of love with, and I'll show you here, is there is no real relief for that lock bar release. There is not. They have that jimping there, but otherwise it's smooth. And while it does kind of help with ergonomics, it will tear up your thumb. And the reason why that's a problem is this deployment method. There's no flipper tab on here. There's no thumb hole opening, oblong hole thing. No, you get this. And I think they call it a thumb ramp or acceleration ramp or whatever. But here's the problem. When you look at this, your immediate reaction is, oh, you run your finger up the blade and then it catches and then it deploys. And because it's on bearings, that's the theme. You run it up, you follow the arrows. Don't do that. I'm telling you right now, do not do that. This is a thumb stud and should always be looked at as a thumb stud. And the problem is that if you do that, this is a thumb grater. It will tear up your thumbs. If you have calluses, say goodbye. So the best way to deploy this, if you're going to use that, believe it or not, is actually to middle finger flick from the bottom and do this. The bearings do work really well. It glides open, it flies open, and if you're not careful, it will get you. And you feel it when it clicks into place, because this is a heavy blade, and vice versa. When you go to shut this, you do get a guillotine drop. It's a smooth guillotine drop, but God forbid your fingers are anywhere near the path of that blade, because it's sharp and it will cut you if this falls into you. So just be careful if you actually end up with one of these things. Some positive things to note. This is a titanium milled pocket clip, and I actually do like this design. I've noticed that BRS on their Evolve knives, it seems like they just can't figure out what direction they want to go with their pocket clip, and they never do the same one twice. But this one does actually work well. It fits nicely in the pocket. There's no drag. It won't tear up your pants, and it looks nice. And if you're a lefty, you can in fact put it on the other side. Although even if you are a lefty, this is still a liner lock. Be that as it may, you can't really switch the sides, the liners on. Maybe it's easier, maybe it's harder. I don't know. Just like you, most likely, I'm also right-handed. Those are just some thoughts that I had. And when I first got this knife, I absolutely was in love with it. And I would have given it a much higher score because I was in the honeymoon period. And this is why I wait a couple weeks before I do a is it Grail or is it garbage. I've mentioned the things that I like. I've mentioned the things that I don't like. Let's sum it up. Love the blade shape. Love the blade steel. Like the materials. Like the pocket clip. I do not like the lock. I do not like the opening mechanism. I've got the scores right here for you. If you don't know how this works, we have 5 categories. We got materials, ergonomics, fidget factor, the lock, and lastly, fit and finish. Each category will be scored out of 10. So let's go ahead and give this bad boy a score. For materials, you've got M390, shredded carbon fiber and titanium with titanium liner and titanium backspacer and titanium clip, and all of that comes in at a nice respectable 7 out of 10. Now before I go any further, remember that this is all based off of the price, so the price on this, if you were to go ahead and buy it from a retailer like Blade HQ, you would pay $281 for this specific model. So at $281, I expect premium materials. I expect at least M390, and I expect at least something to be titanium. The shredded carbon fiber is nice, and in this case, it feels like they were given a list and they're like, screw it, let's just check the boxes. So 7 out of 10 is definitely a good score. Those are good materials, and they're well executed. Next, we have to talk about the ergonomics. Everything is nice and rounded off, so that's definitely a bonus. There's no place that's cut out for your fingers. It lets you choose. It lets you decide. And since this is built by a company that wants you to fidget with their knives, it makes sense that they want to give you that freedom. And it actually does work well. There's jimping on the top here. And so it does allow you to have a nice place to put your thumb. This thumb stud, which is part of the fidget factor as well, because it's so rough and because this lock relief or this lock release, because of that, those two things alone actually brought the score for ergonomics down. Despite how comfortable the handle scales are, those two things will cause you pain. And so for that reason, ergonomics is going to be a 6 out of 10. Moving on, we've got fidget factor. Now there really is only one thing that needs to happen with fidget factor, and that is how much do you want to play with it? It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have all the deployment mechanisms in the world. It just means that you have to want to play with this. And while I definitely played my heart out when I first got it, I gradually dropped off because I was just getting a lot of pain. And it doesn't matter even if you use the bottom part of this thumb ramp, as a thumb stud, it will still grate on your fingers. And on top of that, again, I have to mention the liner lock being uncomfortable because there's no cutout relief for that. It will tear up your fingers. There is one comfortable way that I have figured out how to fidget with this knife, and it is quite fun, and I'll see if I can get it here on camera. And that is doing a blade drop. This little ramp thing right here is spectacularly good for being able to do a blade drop, and I can do it reliably all the time. That's fun, but it does grow old, and even after doing that after a while, you'll see that it will start to wear on your hands. I'm not much of a hands model, but I gotta keep mine as nice as possible for as long as possible, and so for that reason, fidget factor on this guy is unfortunately a 4 out of 10. Next, we have to talk about the lock, and I already mentioned this at the start, but the lock is in fact a liner lock, which I don't necessarily have an issue with in a vacuum. There's plenty of great liner lock knives out there, but for this one, they have the opportunity to do something that they don't do on every knife and can't do on every knife, and that's a bolster lock. A bolster lock would have definitely been phenomenal, and it would have made up for some of the things that are lacking in the fidget factor and the ergonomics, but they didn't. Why would you have two different pieces of titanium like this? Like, you only need one. It feels like they just decided to check some boxes because they're trying to get into the folding knife niche. And that's really disappointing to me because yes, it's a liner lock, and on this lock you see that you get an okay lockup. I'd say that's about 20%. It's definitely usable, and it's not going to hurt you and fail on you when you go to, slay that Amazon package. It is a bigger knife. You might feel tempted to use it for something more hardcore, and if you do, just be very aware I don't necessarily have a whole lot of faith in liner locks for hard use, and I would not recommend this one for hard use either. Lock comes in at a 4 out of 10 as well. And then finally, we're on to fit and finish. Fit and finish on this knife is great. Whoever did the OEM for this, whoever manufactured this for BRS, they did a good job, and I wouldn't blame them for the design of the knife, because they're just given a list of specs, you know, some drawings and an idea of what it's supposed to do, and then it's up to the, you know, the designer to be like, hey, I need this to be like this. And in this case, you know, it's not the OEM's fault. The things that they did well. They rounded off the edges. There is no sharp unnecessary edges, even on, you know, the spine of the blade. It's not crowned necessarily, but you know, it's also not sharp. They knock down the edges nicely. It's perfectly sharp from the factory. Yeah, I mean, it's plenty sharp, and it's M390. So you're going to get great edge retention with this. As far as how well they delivered on what was asked for, I feel like whoever the OEM was did a good job on those items. It's a disappointment in my eyes that BRS didn't understand that they should have asked for a bolster lock. And it's a disappointment in my eyes that they didn't see the need for a backspacer on a knife this big. And maybe they were just afraid of making it too heavy. But you know what? Aluminum isn't that heavy. And an aluminum backspacer on this would have gone farther than these titanium gold barrels. So there it is. Fit and finish is a bit of a redeeming factor on this knife, and it is pretty good. I'm going to give fit and finish a 7 out of 10. Now, if we add all of that up, what do we have here? We've got 7 for materials, we've got 6 for ergonomics, 4 for fidget and locking mechanism a piece, and then fit and finish was a 7, which will bring your total to 28 out of 50. Now that might sound low, but that is in the low recommend range. 21 to 30 is low recommend. So what does that mean? That means that, you know, could I recommend this to you? Sure. I wouldn't say put it super high on your priority list, but you know, this is one of those where it's really going to be left up to the collector. Do you want a knife that has premium materials? You know, are you going to be using it? If not, maybe you don't care about, you know, the lock, and maybe you don't care about, you know, the cheese grater for a thumb stud. You know, if this is one of those knives that you just want something unique, and maybe you have a bunch of nicer knives that just all look the same, then yeah, I could definitely see someone wanting to buy this, but I just can't say prioritize it. But I'm telling you, I wouldn't prioritize this one, because while they got close, they missed it. They missed the mark. This could have been an amazing knife, and I think that it's still pretty good, but it's not as good as it could be. That's all that I got for you. If you watched this far, go ahead and smash the like button. Consider subscribing. I do have a giveaway coming up very soon. If you didn't like it, there's a button for you too. Other than that, I'll see you on the flip side.